So this last chapter of the nervous system unit is looking at all of the senses and sense organs. So a sensory receptor is something that receives stimuli. And this could be really simple, like these free nerve endings over here, or this could be an extremely complex organ like your nose or your ear. So it receives a stimuli, and then that stimuli causes what's called a receptor potential. And if that receptor potential, that's like a local potential, if that local potential is high enough, it's going to cross the threshold and cause an action potential on that neuron. And that's going to send that information down the nerve. Transduction is going to occur when that action potential finally reaches the brain. So transduction is the conversion from one to another. So when you send a signal of light or sound or heat or touch or vibration into nerve signals to the brain, and the way that the brain interprets stimuli depends on where in the brain that signal ends. And if the brain actually receives that signal, you might receive a sensation or a sense. This is subject to awareness, so some sensations, if they're brand new, you might feel them, and then over time they might disappear because you become adapted to them. Not everything we sense gets all the way to our brain to make a sensation. So huge amounts of information are filtered out before they even reach our conscious awareness because they're not stuff we need to be aware of. And then there's other stuff that's important that we don't necessarily sense consciously, things like blood pressure, because our body can take care of that without us needing to put in input. Sensory information can be coded in a lot of different ways. So there's different modalities. This would be things like vision or hearing. And the way that something is interpreted actually depends on where in the brain it goes to. So when you press on your eye, you see light, even though that's a pressure stimulus. The location of the sense is coded by the receptive field. So this is the neurons in the body. So if you look on the back of the body, there are large receptive fields. So when you touch with 2 points, it's actually still going to just feel like 1 point. So the brain can't distinguish between this point and this point. However, in places with really small receptive fields, like the fingers, because the fields are so small, the brain can interpret that information here is different than the information here. Intensity is measured by how many neurons are firing and how quickly. So when neurons fire quickly, they increase the intensity, and increased intensity increases how many neurons are firing. So intensity might be loudness or softness, brightness or dimness of light, mild versus excruciating, pain, heat, cold. And then the duration of a sense is how long it lasts. And some senses adapt, so they actually are still there, but you don't notice them. This is really common with smell. So if you walk into somebody's house and it smells really bad, you notice that right away, but if you stay and hang out for a while, you might not notice the smell anymore because your sensory system actually adapts to the smell. And we can classify the information we get from our senses in a lot of different ways. So a thermosensor is going to sense heat and cold. Photo means light. Nociceptor is actually a pain receptor. A chemoreceptor senses chemicals. So for example, taste and smell would be chemoreceptors, as well as the chemoreceptors of your blood sugar. Mechano would be things like touch, vibration, also pressure. So we can classify things by modality. We can also classify things based on where they come from. Extero is going to be outside of the body, so that's going to be things like vision, hearing, taste, smell, touch. The typical 5 senses that you learn in grade school. And then interoreceptors are things that are inside the body. So these are things that we may not be consciously aware of. So is your stomach full? Are your intestines moving? Is your bladder full? What's your blood pressure? A proprioceptor senses your body position. So when you close your eyes and move your arms and legs, you can tell where they are even though you can't see them. And part of the reason for that is because you have proprioceptors that tell your body where your body is. We can also distinguish receptors based on general senses or special senses. So a general sense is something that is widely distributed, and it's going to be relatively simple as far as the receptor. So this would be something like touch, pain, pressure. Special senses are typically local, usually on the head, and they're fairly complex senses. So these are going to be hearing, vision, olfaction, which is taste and smell. So take a moment and reflect on the different types of information that can be received through sensory receptors.